Welcome to a show about learning technologies so powerful they transcend the boundaries of reality itself. I'm your host, Pinky Gonzalez, and this is New School VR. Hey everybody! Welcome back to New School VR. Pinky Gonzalez here, and joining us today is Dr. Carrie Straub. She's the Executive Director of Educational Programs and Research at Mursion. Welcome to the show, Carrie.
Thank you so much, Pinky. I'm excited to be here.
We're super excited to have you. The program itself at the time of this recording is relatively new, and Mursion gets the distinction of being the first app review.
Oh my gosh.
The first software platform where you really get to talk about how to dig into this stuff and put it to use. And you guys have your fingers in a lot of different training applications, so I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Good. Well, thank you for doing this service for the community. I mean, it really is interesting. I already listened to the other podcast that you did, so I'll be eager to hear our review, of course. An upcoming podcast that you do, I'll be an avid listener.
Awesome. All right. I'm going to hold you to it. So let's just start from the top. What is Mursion?
So Mursion is a virtual reality simulation platform and service. It's a combination of a virtual environment as well as artificial and human intelligence all kind of mixed into one service delivery so that people can go into a virtual environment and basically practice really complex social interactions. It's like a big simulation platform.
A big simulation platform. All right. So just so the listeners know, I'm going to put some videos and screenshots on newschoolvr.com. So anybody that wants to see this stuff in the flesh, so to speak, will be able to do that. But when you say this combination of AI and sort of human and interactive training, what goes into that? What part is AI and what part is human driven?
Yes, well, it's actually what differentiates us from a lot of things that are happening now in the market. So if you think of how people learn right now, one thing that people are really good at doing is designing trainings to transfer knowledge. So you have to learn A, B, and C. I can make an online interactive tutorial for you or a web module, or we can do a webinar, or you can even do a face-to-face class, something like that to learn information. But what is harder to do is take that information and apply it to your specific discipline. And so if you think about like intellectual, like IQ versus EQ, the IQ stuff, passing that information along, we're good at. The EQ stuff, it's harder to train people to do. And EQ is this emotional, interpersonal skills awareness. And so one of the things that we really looked at and said, okay, can you teach people interpersonal skills using artificial intelligence? That's where more and more people we see they're saying, oh, we're going to make IBM's Watson or Siri, all these different artificial intelligence tools so that we can bring these trainings up to scale. But what we kind of turned that on its head and said, actually, no, keeping the human and merging it with the artificial intelligence makes our capabilities so much more nuanced. And really, we can approximate. I'm already, see, Pinky, you got going. Like I'm already talking. But we're able to approximate real human interactions and simulate those human interactions much better than Watson or Siri, right? Like I'm sure you've popped up Siri before and like you've asked a question of like, no, Siri, that's not what I wanted.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I'm totally spoiled now by Alexa, the Echo voice, and the Google is as well. Now I get angry every time I have to use Siri for any reason at all.
No. Yeah, and so I have not interacted with Alexa yet. I would love to do that and find out. And those devices in some ways are much smarter. I know smarter than I will ever be. But there's some things like, I don't know, does Watson understand sarcasm, or does he understand bias, that I'm coming with a bias, or if those are the things that yes, we'll get better and better at doing it. But right now, as far as we know, there is no device that's able to interact like a human. So that's where we come in, and we bring in people that. So have you tried on like a head-mounted display device? I'm sure you have. If you started okay. If you started this podcast, I'm sure you have. So you know how you put these 3D head-mounted displays on, and you're immersed in like a virtual world, right? You're just kind of floating around And that's actually where we get our name from. Mursion is a wordplay on immersion. That you're floating around in this virtual world. Well, imagine now that you were interacting with another person in that world, and it wasn't a dinosaur jumping over you, or like, it wasn't something just happening in the environment. You were also having to deal with a person that felt real and authentic. That's how our software is meant to be used, so that people can get trained on really, really stressful situations and make those mistakes in the stressful situations in virtual reality instead of making them on real people in reality.
I love that and completely agree. This is one of the most critical and highest potentials for VR in education, in my opinion, are those things where you might damage something in real life or make something explode or really hurt somebody's feelings or otherwise, just things that you can't so easily recreate in real life. What a great opportunity to use these virtual technologies, but then with the limitations in AI itself and more, that can be really challenging. So you guys are really addressing that top end of the potential tier.
We think so. Yeah, we think so. But don't you wish these things would have been around when we were in school? Oh my gosh.
There's a whole backstory listeners don't know yet, but I hated school so much. I dropped
Oh,
out of high school twice.
no.
I was arrested for not going to school twice. It was
Full disclosure.
it was not yeah.
All right, I've turned the tables, listeners. Tell me more.
Exactly. But this show isn't about me, Carrie.
Oh no, tell us.
Yeah, no, so much of the inspiration for this show and the ironic twists and turns of my career in e-learning and education after graduating from high school really came from this sense of what high school was, or what that just undergraduate experience was for me, was it didn't work. It wasn't in line with the way I think and interact, and I didn't get what I would have needed from it. And I really believe that VR represents a lot of the potential to fill in those gaps with atypical students.
Yeah, and like being able to learn by doing. Actually, instead of learn about something by like reading a book about China, let's go to China. Let's see what it feels like as much as we can approximate it. I heard like a really obvious quote. My CEO, Mark Atkinson, said it last week, and he attributed to Charlotte Danielson, who's a leading thinker in teacher preparation, teacher professional learning in our field. And he said the learner does the learning. And that's what Charlotte Danielson says. The learner does the learning. So the teacher can't get up there and teach. The learner has to do the learning. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's so obvious, but it's so true. And I think that's what virtual reality does, is it allows the learner to experience the learning rather than, just approach it from a knowledge base or conceptually and not really be able to apply that to themselves. And I'll give a little bit of personal insight. I used to run an all boys boarding school and we lived out in the woods on 60 acres and all boys, and a lot of those students, they were teenagers, great guys, but they were not your typical students, and they were frustrated in school. They found it boring and challenging, and they just didn't connect with a lot of the subjects or their teachers. So I think about those guys too a lot and say, wouldn't they have loved to, if I would have had an Oculus Rift, I never would have gotten them out. They would have been doing so much schoolwork. They would have loved it. So.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I've got a 3-year-old daughter, and another one of the great inspirations for the show is, she had an iPhone the day she was born, which is just one of our old phones that we used as a sound machine. But she's growing up at a time when she is going to have access to all of this. So how are we going to, we as parents and we as educators, going to use this stuff in a healthy way for this generation and those that follow? So back to the learner's gonna do the learning. I love that angle, and sometimes the learner is the teacher themselves, learning to teach. And if I'm not mistaken, that was kind of the genesis of the technology itself. Is that right?
Yes, definitely. It was like a flight simulator for pilots. Well, they wanted a teaching simulator for teachers so that they could go in and make mistakes on avatars rather than on real kids at the time, and we talked a little bit about that before, but it was invented as a prototype at the University of Central Florida by 3 professors, and 2 of them were teacher educators and 1 was a computer scientist. And those 3, kind of Michael Hines, Lisa Deeker, and Charlie Hughes, they all got together and they said, wouldn't it be cool if, and they just kept working and working and working until they built a prototype of this technology. And then the story behind it essentially is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation approached them and said, hey, we really like what you guys are doing. They wanted to support the work, so they gave them a series of small grants, of which one culminated in a large research grant. It was $1.5 million to go out and do 2 national studies and look at math and science teachers and see if we gave them simulation, would what they learned transfer back into their classrooms when they were teaching with kids. And so I actually got to run that project with them and learn from the 3 of them, and then eventually met the gentleman, Mark Atkinson, who founded the company Mursion. As part of that Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation work, they said, in the 3rd year, we want you to look at commercialization. We're not going to give you this money to research without looking bigger picture. How can you help improve education? So Mark Atkinson and Arjun Nagendran, he was another one of the developers and co-creators of the framework that the software is built on. The 2 of them formed Mursion, and then I came over and got to work with these guys, and a couple of our other colleagues from UCF joined as well. And so we're out here in San Francisco now, but standing on the shoulder of the work that the people at University of Central Florida did.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's just amazing. And are they continuing that research now? Or are they on to new
Oh
adventures?
my gosh. Yes, and yes. They're continuing it, and yes, they're on to new adventures. You can't, those 3 are so innovative, and they always are doing really great things. So they're going on and looking at building new environments and new different ways, looking at new avatars that have disabilities so teachers can practice working with those kids. And they're probably working on some top secret stuff that I don't know about anymore because I'm not there. And then here at Mursion, we also are working on new developments, and because now we have the basic understanding of the concept, and so everybody's kind of tinkering and tweaking and making it better and better and better. So you can tell I love my job. I'm really excited.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you do. And I can only imagine the joy of being able to blend the virtual innovations with real life scenarios that have an impact on real people in a fundamental way. And you can measure it.
Yeah. And that honestly is, you just articulate the most fun. Like you say, okay, this is something that we encounter and we need to get better at doing. And so it's kind of like going up, and I don't do free throw practice, but I've seen people do it. But it's just doing it over and over and over until you get better at it. And it's so fun to craft scenarios that, like, one of the things we do at Mursion is when we demonstrate the technology, and I should do a demo for you sometime. You're invited, so email me and we'll do a demo. It's really easy to do remotely. But we can do a scenario where you can practice being a teacher, and we throw classroom management challenges at you that are like typical, like a student pulls out a cell phone. Like, how do you handle that? You can't grab it from her. She's an avatar. You have to either catch her attention, or you have to get her to want to put it away, or you have to manage all these difficult things that teachers have to do. So we can create and customize any scenario, and that's why I like our particular platform. So when you think about AI, if you want to change a scenario, you have to do a lot of software and code development. But because we have a human in the loop of our software, and they're working with the AI, the human can actually bear a lot of the brunt in terms of development. And so we can be more agile and develop customized scenarios in a handful of hours without having to do specialized coding and things like that you would have to do. So we're and I can't tell you any more than that, or I'll have to kill you. No, I'm just
Don't worry, this is all off the record.
Yes, of course.
So there's a couple things in there that I think are really worth highlighting. First of all, you mentioned, I would be able to do one of these demos myself. Where is the person learning? Are they in a studio? Are they in an office? Where are they physically located when this is going on?
Yeah, they technically can be anywhere, and we do have them located in anywhere. Across different states right now. We even have people that we're working with in Dubai and the UK. But our basic center, Mursion has 2 basic locations, and one in San Francisco and one in Orlando.
And is person who's playing the role of the student or the customer or whomever is running the simulation, are they seeing the person in the training session, or is that person represented as an avatar? How does that work?
They're getting data in all different types of ways.
Ooh.
Now
I'm intrigued.
I'm gonna start getting more and more vague as we go.
Carrie, are you watching me right now?
No. I know everything. No.
Okay, so some of that is secret sauce. It sounds like you're only half kidding with some of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's what makes us special. And we're new. We've been around for about almost 2 years now, and not a lot of people are doing what we do, and not a lot of people understand what we do. And we've learned a lot. We've got some really great partnerships. We're partnering with Educational Testing Service, and that's top secret. I can talk a little bit about it, but not how it works. But they're developing an assessment for teacher licensure. So you can imagine teachers now, they might, in Florida, you can take a multiple choice test. And if you pass that test, you can become a teacher. And if you have to have a bachelor's degree and some coursework and things like that from the college level. But that's not, every state's different. So some states you can take a video of yourself teaching a lesson and reflect on it and then send that information in to be evaluated. And so what we're partnering with Educational Testing Service to do is and with TeachingWorks out of the University of Michigan. So we're saying, okay, there's some practices that teachers engage in that are like really important. And so those practices might be eliciting student thinking, like questioning students and finding out, what do you know about this, and understanding and using that information when you teach them. Or another thing is orchestrating or leading a group discussion that is so that all of the students are involved, not just the ones that like to talk a lot, and kind of helping the students learn from each other and learn how to talk about the content. And so those things really important for teachers, and they're really hard to do. And so ETS is working with us to develop a series of simulations where people would have to actually interact with the avatars and demonstrate those teaching skills or proficiencies in the simulation on demand, instead of being able to say, oh, here's a video of me doing it and choosing, how that is. You could choose the video, like, oh yeah, I take 20, go.
Yeah, the listeners also have no idea that there is no editing after a podcast is ever recorded for any of their favorite shows.
Exactly. So that work is, we're learning a lot in our work with ETS and about making standardized performances and it's really complicated work. A lot of smart people are on the project from ETS and Mursion, and so we're really happy to have that partnership with them. But part of it does come down to, like, this is the expertise that we've developed over time. And so if people want to engage and learn more about it, we're happy. We love great partnerships. We're on a few different research proposals with a couple research proposals, with the National Science Foundation and other partners. So it's not like we're top secret and we'll never tell you, but we want to engage with you as a partner too.
Yeah, no, that makes great sense. So a lot of what we're talking about here is a personal passion of mine, the potential of this stuff in the classroom, but you guys also doing a lot in the corporate world. Is that right?
Yes. So we've just recently pivoted from education into corporate learning. And I wish my colleague Brent Brown could have been here, but he's out, he's doing the hustle. He's really, he's getting out there and talking to a lot of different companies about the work that we're doing. So that has been fairly recent, and we've said, wow, we can do sales enablement, like teach people how to become better salespeople. We can do leadership development and help them become better managers and supervisors. We can do customer service. There's really kind of any type of complex social interaction we're able to simulate. You just have to have a visual environment that fits the storyline that you're working with. So that for us has been interesting. One of the most interesting, I'll give you an actual example. It makes it a little bit more clear. We partnered with Best Western, and Best Western trained, so let's see, they trained about 15,000 of their front desk staff across the country. I think it was like 2,200 sites that they had. And wow. Each one did about 10 minutes of simulation. So they would have I think we designed with them 6 different scenarios. And the Best Western scenarios were really they were related to, you had an avatar come up, you were a so imagine you're running the front desk and an avatar approaches you and says, I have this problem. So one of the problems might be, well, what would you think? A problem that a customer at a hotel would complain about. What would you think?
My room smells like somebody smoked in it.
Yes. My room smells like somebody smoked in it. Another one was they're partying in the room next to me. So those type of scenarios, they crafted them so that they were, we're laughing about it now, but these are serious business concerns that they want their employees to deal with. But they crafted scenarios that people would encounter, and they wanted their focus was really to improve their customer service by making their front desk staff understand the importance of owning a problem and saying, hey, you know what? I can help you with that. How can I help you? What can I do? Rather than bouncing it off to something else or some not my fault, that kind of thing. So they did these simulations with them. I think they did 10 minutes each. It's not like they did 20 hours worth of simulation. It's really powerful, short simulations, 5 to 10 minutes at the most. So they did these scenarios, and then they got a little bit of feedback from a coach that was there. And then they did have you heard of Net Promoter Scores?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yep. Would you recommend this business to a friend, right?
Yeah, and it's like 1 through 10, and 10 is the best one. So they did a study with us where they after they had done about half of their sites, so 1,100 of them or so, they they took customer service data, they looked at all their customer service data, and they compared the two groups. And the group that had the Mursion simulations had the highest bump in customer service, specifically in problem solving, which is what they were looking at for our training, ever in the brand's history. So
wow.
After 10 minutes per person of training. So, and this was a pretty big study. So we finished that about 6 months ago. So probably in 2 years, Pinky, I won't have time for you anymore. I'm going to be
well, yeah, by then this will be our most famous show, and everybody will already have heard it. So
no, maybe, who knows? No, I'll never forget you, Pinky. You were the one first to our app. But imagine like that for us. We knew the power of simulation. Like I was part of the research team that worked at UCF. We saw teachers do 4 10-minute sessions, and they changed 40 minutes of professional learning, and they changed their performance in their classroom, significantly outperforming their peers who hadn't had that. It's like we saw that and we were like, wow, that's pretty impactful to take 40 minutes of professional development and have it change your practice. So we kind of knew that would happen in other fields. And so when we created those scenarios for Best Western, we were banking on it. And so I bet, but we didn't know in brain history. We were really, really happy with those results. So.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
You know why as almost hard to believe as that is, why I find it so easy to believe is having done a little bit of public speaking coaching. I started out as I'm a charismatic person. I'm not afraid to talk in groups of people, but when you have another person watching you and critiquing you and with a perspective of expertise about that particular thing, it really ramps up the pressure. It's, you become self-conscious and you start thinking much more analytically about yourself and what you're doing and how you're doing it. And B, we all do things that we don't know that we're doing, whether it's voice patterns or using hands, rolling our eyes or one of the examples I heard in one of the Mursion company videos out there is the tendency to skip over the highest performing students in the class because they're self-motivated, not necessarily the ones that are going to seek out that attention. And teachers tend to think that they're serving that student while completely missing the fact that they're ignoring them unintentionally.
And not even being able to reflect on it. So wait, tell me more about your, so how did you practice and improve your public speaking skills? What'd you do?
Well, it was a small group and there was a professional coach there. They had us come up with 3 5-minute presentations that represented different kinds of emotional stories. And basically we would tell a story, it would be videotaped, and then we would learn a few sort of basic processes or techniques. And then in the second presentation, we would have to apply those techniques. And then in the third presentation, we had further refined the individual performances.
Love
and
it. Love
new
it.
things to think about. And by the end, we then watched our first presentation. And it was crazy.
The
it was
anguish.
like, oh, yeah, like what an idiot. He's not even maintaining eye contact for 4 seconds. And,
oh my God.
So just really
true.
literal
so
stuff,
great.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that much. I mean, so you did kind of what we do. I mean, the difference between what we do and that is that on our end, when you're presenting to a group of people, you're not necessarily interacting with people. Although who knows what principles they were teaching you. You can do like group, you can do interactions, but generally you're getting up and you're talking out to a group of people. So your avatars wouldn't need to be that interactive, unless am I violating like one of the principles? Okay.
No, not at all. You're right on. You're right on.
But so for us, if you're having a difficult conversation and the person setting off some triggers and putting you under duress on top of all of that. That's where practicing in a virtual environment, you can't just do it with a video camera. But I love that process that you went through. Like, it's the basic concept where you do a brief, powerful simulation of reality, and then you go back and you have a chance to reflect on it. And you guys had videos of yourself that you could watch. As painful as that is, it's so good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing is, anybody who's actually had a real life conversation in VR, and I'll use VR in the broadest sense of the word. If you've been on Second Life back in the day, or the latest greatest stuff at Alt Space, or even my favorite shooter game right now is called Quiver, and it's got a multiplayer thing where you can interact with other players. And there's an intimidation in that too. It's this strange feeling that there's really another person that you're interacting with, even though they're represented by, a guy shooting arrows. That might be a woman in Boston,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there's this strange social contract going on. Like we all know that we're real, but we're all playing something. I don't know. In some cases, wild fantasy. In other cases, just everyday conversation, hanging out, and talking about common interests.
And the skills that you bring, whether you're role playing or in reality you're acting as yourself in a virtual world, are the same skills. Like you're
absolutely.
You can't change your skill set. And so getting to practice and learn new skills in a virtual world is great. I mean, you're learning by doing, so that's great too. I mean, I got to get into something. I have no free time to go learn Quiver or whatever, but I've got to figure some of these things out. Where can I learn about this stuff?
All right. So I want a demo of Mursion, and I'll give you a demo of Quiver.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Don't shoot me. That's what I don't want to happen. Like with a bow and arrow. Like that's the last thing.
There are plenty of goblins and dragons and so forth.
Okay. It's a deal. I love it.
It's super fun. But so another question I had for you about the human dynamic. I know in the classroom simulations, one actor can potentially play multiple students. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. So we call that person a simulation specialist, and they are orchestrating the moves of multiple avatars, and they use the software to do that. And actually, simulation specialists can be trained to take on a lot of different avatar personas. So they might be a classroom of middle school students, or they could be an upset mother, or they could be an angry male teacher, and our software allows them to jump in and inhabit all of these different roles.
Wow, that's amazing. And has that come into play yet? And I don't know if I'm getting beyond the veil of secrecy, but do you use that same capability in the corporate environments?
Yes.
That is amazing.
Yes, we
and
do.
It goes beyond just a person reading a script or pretending to be another person. There's actually voice augmentation and gestures, and there's a nuanced element to this as well. Yeah,
I try to say orchestrating it without talking about it too much, but yeah, there's a big cognitive demand on them, and what our developers and our CTO Arjun Nagendran is really thinks a lot about is how to support that simulation specialists so they can do more advanced cognitive activities and let some of the software kind of offload those tasks. And so as the software gets stronger and stronger, 5 years from now, I'm sure it will look very different. We worked on the project, and I saw the equipment that they used to use years ago, and it's very different than the equipment that they use now. And so, 5 years is an eternity in technology. I'm sure it's going to look completely different.
Totally. So I know this is a question you get all the time, but how, if all of this is human driven, basically on a one-to-one basis, how do you serve everyone in the world all the time? How does it scale?
How do you bring it to scale? Yeah. So scalability is, for us, it's kind of, if I say that we run like a call center, then it's like, oh, okay, I understand. So imagine how a call center works. You have a group of people that are trained. You may have a ton of people, or you may have fewer people that are trained in one thing, depending on what the demand might be. But users will contact the call center, queue up their simulation, and then the simulation specialists deliver that simulation based on what they're trained on able to do. So it's kind of like you're going into a queue, and you're at different scale, or different scenarios will look different, but it's all basically that same premise. So it's not the way that artificial intelligence works, it's not running asynchronously without having some type of a human that's interacting, but it's not meant to replace that because we don't think that it would be quality. We don't think it would be engaging if it was all AI. Again, it would be like talking
Yeah,
to
right,
Siri.
right. So, is there a point where you guys are able to train a client like a Best Western, where they then incorporate this into their own employee development programs? Or
I'll give you a bonus for helping me sell my product. So you're giving me a great chance to talk about it. Oh my gosh. No, yes, we do have that. So we, like you said, hey, there are people out there that would be interested in learning how to deliver the service themselves. And that might be for a bunch of different reasons. They might want to, like if you can, let's say you have your own simulation specialist at your location, you can go to that person and design and quickly design a scenario without having to call up Mursion and do an engagement with them. So a lot of people like that because they can design pretty complicated scenarios and they can do it quickly. We call it rapid prototyping of scenarios. So that's one of the benefits. Another thing, like I told you before, we were working with schools over in Dubai and they wanted an Arabic speaker. And that's harder for us to find people that speak another language and that understand their cultural context. So the software allows you to be flexible in terms of the language as a result of the way that it's operated. So they said, okay, well, we want to get our own software license. So that's definitely something. And we think ultimately our vision is a place where people can come together and users and people that are learners like trainees can come together in common scenarios that are helpful for them. And Mursion will be that platform and basically be the connector between
think that's
people.
so great. And because you came from such a solid academic and research-based background, as you continue to learn best practices and just the nature of human virtual experience, are you going to continue to feed back into academic research on a published basis, or where's that line of demarcation?
Oh my
at?
gosh, you sound like my mother. Like she's like, you've got to be publishing. I didn't know this was going to deteriorate into this thinking. No, I'm kidding. So yes,
Hi, Mom.
we are. I'm going to. Okay. No, this weekend. It's like just for the listeners. It's Friday afternoon, and I'm a little bit loopy. It's right before the weekend, but as we're recording this. But the yes. So one of the things that is, as I'm joking about it, but it is very important to Mursion, is taking that feedback that we get and looping it back in to improve our practices. And so whether we get that feedback from our clients and they tell, like we're engaged in all of the simulations that they do. So we learn as people do the simulations. The scenarios that people design are their intellectual property, but we can still benefit and learn like best practices that way. So that's one way that we improve our delivery. But another way that we're doing is we're partnering on, we have a couple of NSF grants that I think are really cool that I'm involved in. One of them is with William and Mary, and they are actually designing a series of simulations that would allow people who are going into the sciences to experience what can be called a microaggression based on someone's ethnicity or race. And so imagine if you are evaluating a bunch of candidates for a doctoral program, or you're evaluating a bunch of candidates for employment, and one person in the room, as you're evaluating all of the information, says, I don't think this person's right for us based on their name. And they make some type of a negative microaggression or racial slur, something like that. They're trying to train people how to combat that and address it head on, or whatever their framework is that they think that people should use. They're using simulation so that people can practice that framework in a safe place. And they're looking to see how that will change people's perceptions. So that is one, I mean, for us, we're so interested in that type of work. We would really, really we think that simulation is a safe way for people to try on other roles and practice things like that. So I joke, but yes, we are doing that. Another way that we're doing it is we're partnering with a different group at ATS. They're a very large company, but we have Jamie McKeska and Heather Howell over there are designing, and they might be interested in coming to talk to you at some point. If you would be interested, I'm sure that they want people to know about their work. But
for sure.
Yeah, they're designing simulations for elementary school students I'm sorry, it might be middle school. Oh, it's escaping me. Like I said, Friday afternoon. But they're designing simulations where for mathematics and science teachers, people who are preparing to be math and science teachers, it's really, really hard to have really high quality classroom discussions and discourse in the class about the content. If you don't understand the content yourself, and you probably were a victim of this in some of your teachers' classes and didn't even know it. If you weren't engaged in the content, it might be because your teacher didn't really have a strong handle on the content because it was harder.
Wow.
So they didn't know how to talk. And I mean, I know when I was teaching, one of the things that I struggled with was teaching content. And so I feel like this type of a thing, if teachers can practice going in, or people who are preparing to be teachers can practice these challenging skills and learn the content better, but then have to go in and actually orchestrate a classroom discussion, that is such a great way for teachers to practice it. So Jamie and Heather are, they're doing research on that, and they're actually designing a series of avatars that will be available on the network after they run them through like their prototyping stage and get focus group feedback and all of the great things that make the simulations that much better. So we've got a couple different ways that we're doing that. And then as we go into like the corporate learning sector, the way that they measure success is completely different than the way that academia measures success. So as we pivot and work more and more in those places, we'll get faster at taking their feedback loops and improving what we do. So again, we're kind of in the center of everything, watching and learning from people in this whole new virtual space, you know?
It gives me the chills to think about how much impact this really has the potential to have, and no doubt already has. Do you guys open up the platform to other academic institutions? For example, Concordia University, which sponsors this show, they're known for their teaching program. Is this sort of thing open to them, or is this?
As a service, basically. So I know the folks over there, and they're doing a lot of cool stuff too. And I know that they like to be kind of on the cutting edge and thinking about what is coming up, the best way they can prepare their teachers. And I think that, and other students, not just teachers that are there, people learning how to be teachers. But so a company or a university basically can engage with us and have access to the software and the avatars that we make available on our platform. So basically, it would be a service like any other. They could either purchase an hourly use of the service. Again, you're teeing me up to talk about my product. This is wonderful. No, but they could purchase on
what we do here.
Hopefully you give me a good review. Oh my gosh. But they could do an hourly service, or we could do like that software license that we talked about. And that really, like, someone like you, I would think you would like the software license, because you could run both sides of the software. So you could have your learners at one location, and then you could design your own simulations and create scenarios that were important to you. And so it really depends on the users. Do they want to have that autonomy and kind of control over the simulation, or would they rather us design the scenarios, or would they rather partner with us and us do some of it, the delivery and some of the design with them? Or, we really want to make it flexible for people. That's ultimately how, and that's one of the big things I learned at the University of Central Florida, is like, the more flexible you make it, the more people will be able to use it in a valuable way. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And what if I'm an 8th grade science teacher right now, and my school is not sending me to one of these simulation programs, but I'm personally interested in it? Is there any sort of a one-on-one or ad hoc training option?
We're working towards that right now. We don't have like a customer right now. We're mostly business to business, but that's something that we're passionate about getting. I mean, one of the things that we've all talked about here at Mursion is, wouldn't it be great if we could give access to kids to be able to pick which avatar they wanted to tutor them on whatever content it might be. So that would be engaging for them to do. I have a funny story. So a friend of mine, her son was actually in the simulation, and his job was to teach one of the five kids in front of them. He was going to have to teach them some algebra. And so he, took it very seriously. He prepared for the simulation. He was a real kid that had real content to teach. So he got up and taught the avatars, and the avatars were being resistant to something. And he said, you have to show your work. And she said, oh my gosh, I have tried to get him to show his work for so long. And Morgan Russell, she's a colleague of us here. So I think that Morgan and I laughed about that. It's like, it's so interesting how people, when they're in the act, they're going to do that. So right now there's not a specific path to it, but that, like I said, we're brand new. So eventually we think that we will have those options. That'll be when I come on for my second show a year from now.
So fantastic. Gosh, Carrie, I could go on with 100 more questions. I think this stuff is so fascinating. To your earlier point, it is a Friday evening, so I'll let you off the hook. But really can't thank you enough for being on the show. It's so exciting to see that this stuff is not just theoretical. It's not just the hope of the future, but it's really in practice today, and you're really getting the results across the board from the academic world and corporate training and beyond, which is what this exact show is about. So I really can't think of a better guest to have on.
Oh, good. Well, we've got a lot of great partners and we're learning a lot from them. So the only thing I'll ask is that you don't review our product until you come and do a demo with us. We'll do.
All right, deal.
Is that fair?
That's totally fair. It's totally fair. In the meantime, if somebody wants to check this stuff out for themselves or see what is available online, how do we find you?
So come to our website. If you pop on there, you can see some pictures of our avatars. You can't interact with them right on demand there, but you can see them kind of moving around and get an inkling of what it will be like. And then just reach out to us on the website. So our website's Mursion.com, and that's Mursion.com. And like I told you before, Mursion is a wordplay on immersion, which is immersive learning. That's this whole kind of genre of learning that we're all about. So go on there, and there's a place that they can do a demo if they want to find out more and experience what it feels like. It takes about 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how many simulations that they want to do, and we schedule it out in advance. And we love to make new friends, so we'd be very happy to talk to people.
So cool. Dr. Carrie Straub, Executive Director, Educational Programs and Research at Mursion. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope you have a fabulous weekend.
Thank you so much, Pinky. Thanks for having me. Take care, okay?
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
New School VR is graciously supported by and recorded live at Concordia University in beautiful Portland, Oregon. For over 100 years, Concordia has been preparing teachers and learning professionals for life and for a living. For more information, visit cu-portland.edu. And by ... an experiential design and technology studio specializing in custom virtual reality and experiential marketing activations that incite wonder and inspire action. See more at ... .io. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on iTunes or through your favorite podcast delivery app. Visit us online at newschoolvr.com, and thanks for listening. I'm your host, Pinky Gonzalez, and this is New School VR.
This VR podcast is dope.